Sebastian is the author of Why We Fight, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Victoria Tensing. All right, good evening, everyone. I want to start with you, Sebastian. You know, this whole idea of security clearances, I mean, we all know that you don't have a right to have a security clearance. You know, Brennan is kicking and screaming that he's losing his First Amendment rights as if he's going to stop talking. And it really is a courtesy, a professional courtesy. So is this guy entitled to a courtesy of any sort?
I don't care who the president is, Judge. I don't care whether it's a Republican. I don't care whether it's a Democrat. I don't care whether it's an independent. The fact is, why should anybody who's left government service maintain a clearance for the rest of their lives? The viewers should understand that at every security clearance, the first investigation, just the first one, costs you, the taxpayer, $25,000. And then we expect...
Sebastian, here's the argument that they make, and there's a way I understand it, and that is there is institutional knowledge. So if a new head of the CIA comes in and he says, you know, let me talk to somebody who's done this before, not that Mike Pompeo's going to want to call John Brennan, but that is the argument, you know, whether it's a new DA coming in or a new CIA, you know, does that make sense, though?
But no, it doesn't. Even that one doesn't make sense. Why? What happens to John Brennan? What happens to James Woolsey if they leave the position of director of CIA and they are read out of the programs and they lose their clearance? Does their institutional memory suddenly fall out of their ears? Of course it doesn't. If their advice, if their counsel is requested by their successor in this administration, I can guarantee you, Judge, nobody wants to ask John Brennan's advice because he voted for the communists in 1976 and he's still doing the work of Putin. If they want to talk to him, they can invite him back. He can sit in a skiff. He can tell you, well, back in 1980, whatever. The clearance is irrelevant to the question of institutional memory.
Well, and, you know, Tom Fitton, yeah, I'll go to you. I mean, you're fighting to get information. But let's stay on the topic of the clearance. Hillary Clinton exposed classified secrets on her email, and that's according to Jim Comey, like an open orchid, according to that Romanian hacker Guccifer. So why is she still walking around with her security clearance, and why isn't she on that list of wanteds, so to speak?
That's a good question. Whether she has one or not is an open question, frankly. But, you know, the idea of a courtesy national security clearance, it tells you that it's not about national security. It's about political rackets here in Washington, D.C., where these former officials keep their security clearances as a part to use as part of their resume to increase their value to their next employers. It has nothing to do with national security. It's an indication of swamp politics, the way things work, and it was a brilliant anti-corruption move by the president to take on Brennan here, and I hope he does go down the list. And frankly, we should reform the whole system. Once you leave government, we have no more need for you. You're not working for the government anymore. You're not a contractor. You lose your national security clearance. Doesn't mean we don't appreciate the prior service, but we move on to protect the national security for people walking around out in the street with no government business for having it.
The next CEO of any organization, Tom, doesn't get to go back into the company and check everything they want to know about it. Once their time is up, their time is up. But Victoria, I mean, if you've got these people who keep their clearance, and there's no question they're monetizing, they're politicizing, consultants, advisors, lobbyists, MS and CNN consultants, or talking heads. But is there a sunset period where it automatically, and I know you represent a lot of these people who have clearances over the years, is there a sunset? Do you then fight to keep it?
Judge,
what?
I am the only one on this panel who has a clearance. I have top secret clearances.
How long have you had it, and how often do you have to go through a review?
Well, and this is to answer your question, because it depends. And I have had representation of people from the CIA, and most recently my Uranium One, Doug Campbell, client, and so I had to have top secret clearances in order to be able to talk with them. And so it depends on what you're doing. I don't know. Do you need a top secret clearance to do your job? Because that's the job Brennan's doing right now. He's commenting on TV. I don't think he needs it for that.
Well, But what about everyone else? I mean, you know, why? Let's talk about, and I'll go to you, Seb. You know, Bruce Orr. This guy's back channeling information from a guy who was let go by the FBI, and who's a good friend of his wife, who works for the organization that made the dossier, and he's channeling this information from the from Steele to the DOJ. I mean, forget about security clearance. Why is he even working in the Department of Justice?
There's one reason and one reason alone. As you are well aware, there are certain administrative things that you can do to somebody who is in government employ that you can't do to them once they've been fired. That's the charitable excuse. But my advice is very simple to the administration. Everybody like Brennan, like Clapper, like McCabe, who have demonstrated their partisanship should be stripped of their clearances forthwith. Anybody else on that long, long list, and it's not just the list Sarah Huckabee read, it's a much longer list. Anybody whose fingerprints are on Uranium One, on FISA-gate, on the unmaskings, and I mean it.
All right, but here's the thing. You know the president's a tough guy. Why isn't he doing it?
Well, I think he gets. I'll tell you what. Look, there are certain individuals in the counsel to the president's office who are more lawyers than they are political professionals, and they don't understand the costs to national security of not stripping these people of their security clearances.
Okay, Tom Fitton, you know what, I will go to you, Victoria. Seb just said something that is very interesting, and that's a lot of these lawyers in the Oval Office, you know, are in there saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, what do you think?
Well, I think that's going to change, because I think the president has found a shiny new toy, and that is something else that he can do in addition to pardons that nobody can stop him from doing, notwithstanding the silly people on the Hill say they're going to pass some legislation that stops him from taking away clearances. They can't stop him. That's an executive authority, and I think he's found that it's tweaking people, and particularly people that he wants to tweak, and it's going to continue.
Okay.
Unabated, I predict.
Okay, and Tom Fitton, I mean, now you've got Bruce Orr, who clearly is violating all of the rules of the FBI and the DOJ as it relates to sources. So why is Mueller not investigating them? And I heard someone today say, well, it's supposed to be about the election. Well, this is about the election, about Bruce Orr working with Fusion GPS, and his wife is making money off of Fusion. He's not declaring that money in his financial disclosure. He's conflicted. I mean, why isn't Mueller looking at him? Instead, is Mueller's taking the investigation or the information from him?
Well, there's your problem. You've got Mueller using Bruce Orr's information, Christopher Steele's information, the Clinton DNC dossier, using that, taking that whole Obama-Clinton operation targeting at Trump and running with it. Look, this Justice Department is attacking the presidency through the Mueller operation, saying that he doesn't have the right to fire the FBI director and investigating him for that. Now they're messing with his ability to conduct foreign policy. If I were the president, I would come in and tell the Justice Department, either you stop it, and if you refuse to do so, I may go to court to get it stopped, because right now you've got an out-of-control Mueller investigation. We see where they're going with Manafort, where they're willing to break every rule in the book to get someone who's not even involved in Russia collusion. Lord knows what else they're willing to do to get President Trump.
Well, you know, and Sebastian, maybe you can just put a period on that one, because clearly you've got these guys involved in the run-up to the election. Their jobs, they violated the rules, and they you know, to many, they committed obstruction of justice by creating this false document and lied to the court. Why is Mueller not looking at them?
I'll tell you why. Because the day before Mueller was appointed special counsel by his best friend, Rod Rosenstein, he had an interview in the White House to which Rod Rosenstein escorted him, in which he wanted to get his old job back as director of the FBI.
Yep.
Robert Mueller wanted his old job back, and he failed. He crashed and burned, and the new president said, no, you're not going to be the director. I want new blood. after I fired Comey. And what did Rod Rosenstein do? The next day, he appointed this man as special prosecutor against the man who he had failed in front of during his job interview. That is the biggest conflict of interest. This is a revenge operation. Bob Mueller is executing a revenge operation.
But Judge, let me say something, because there's a legal reason also that this is happening, and it's the way Rod Rosenstein drafted the authority that he gave to Mueller. He said any link that you find between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, he did not give an authority to Mueller to go into the Clinton campaign or anything to do with this, the DNC.
Mueller should be investigating himself. He's a witness in this case.
Yeah, well,
it's incredibly absurd to have him run this investigation, given his personal involvement in the underlying facts of the case.
And tomorrow
Where is the Justice Department?
And tomorrow night in my open, because we have to go, guys, I'm going after him for all his confidence.